Hello. The following presentation aims to provide an overview of Jack Mezirow's seminal work on transformative learning theory. Specifically, we will explore his theory known as perspective transformation theory. Although Mezirow's work is popular in graduate education circles, the value of his ideas isn't just for those groups. His work explores how encountering new information and experiences can be used to help us see ourselves, others, and the world more fully. And knowing that process is something just about anyone can benefit from. The goal of this presentation is to make Mezirow's exceptional insights easy to understand regardless of your background. So we're going to quickly review how Mezirow developed his perspective transformation theory. Then, we'll dive into each one of the 10 perspective transformation phases. In the end, we'll give an example of what those phases look like in action and cover how those phases spurred additional studies on transformative learning and where we are in the field today. All of this will be done with illustrations which were designed after deep reflections of Mezirow's work. Let's jump into that history. It's important to note that Jack Mezirow's theories are based in the idea that people learn from interacting and interpreting the world around them. He also believed that truth exists, and as individuals and a society, we are learning the immensity of it from different angles, although never fully possessing it. As to his development of transformative learning theory, dubbed perspective transformation, Jack shared that it started when observing his wife's experience. In the late 70s, Edie Mezirow joined a graduate program. It was at that time when most learning was instrumental, focusing on skill development. Yet Jack noticed his wife undergo identity changes which seemed to lead to a change in behavior. Being an adult education scholar, Jack dove deep into what makes experiences so meaningful to adults, building on the ideas of social constructivism and critical theory. Jack decided to study the phenomena of perspective change based on experience, engaging thousands of women attending programs across the U.S. and analyzing their experiences. Before jumping into the phases of perspective transformation, it is very important to clarify what is being transformed in Mezirow's view. Mezirow sees transformation happening around individuals' frame of reference. To illustrate differences in frame of reference, think of how an ant looks at a pile of trash versus a human. An ant would see the trash and think it is the best day ever, as the trash would provide a buffet for the ant and its family. Yet most humans would see the trash can as worthless, and the smell as a nuisance. Even the word trash is a shared symbol in English speakers' minds as something that is lacking use. Our frame of reference could be similar or very different, even as human beings. The symbol for pistachio could spark a very different reaction based on your frame of reference. If your partner has a severe pistachio allergy, but you secretly love pistachios, you might experience both an increased heart rate out of caution and out of desire. On the other hand, if you are someone from the Middle East and do not have pistachio allergies in the family, the image might evoke warm thoughts and cultural pride. We have individual predispositions influenced by culture and psychology, shaping what we see as normal, ideal, and expected. Those predispositions are also shaped by our feelings and learning styles. Those pieces of frame of reference create what Mezirow calls meaning schemes. They build what Mezirow notes as the other piece of frame of reference, which is meaning perspectives. What you think of when you see a pistachio or hear the word trash, the belief or judgment about it, that's your meaning perspective. Mezirow's research focused on what happens in learning experiences that change one's frame of reference or meaning structures, essentially changing the core programming of individuals and how they exist in the world. So, what is the process that occurs when a person moves from seeing themselves as a mother and a homemaker to a mother, domestic engineer, advocate for women's rights, and competent financial advisor is exactly what Mezirow wanted to explore. And Mezirow articulated the process from his research as the 10 stages of perspective transformation. So let's check that out. First, we will start with the phases of experiencing a disorienting dilemma. A disorienting dilemma can be caused by a major life event like a death, illness, divorce, being passed over for a promotion, failing a major exam, or retirement. But a disorienting dilemma can also come from art or engaging in a new culture. In that way, it is an outside force that disrupts the foundation which life is built upon. Then comes the phase of self-examination with feelings of guilt, shame, or fear. At this phase, a person would question if their struggle is caused by their existing worldview. And that can be pretty painful because it's questioning a core piece of who they are and how they exist, and thinking of it as being insufficient to manage their circumstances. The next phase is the critical assessment of assumptions. The critical assessment dives deep into why we think, feel, or act the way we do. It is also an exploration of errors and consequences that come or could come from how we think, feel, or act. The ability to critically assess varies person to person, and it's impacted by factors such as education, age, and cultural background. At the same time, critical assessment of assumptions is a skill that can be taught. Recognition that one's discontent and the process of transformation are shared, and that others have negotiated similar change is the next phase. April showers bring May flowers, or I don't feel good, but I think I'll be okay, might be phrases someone would say in this phase. Recent neuroscience suggests that this word recognition is actually an intuitive process in which our brain quickly processes stimuli based on previous experiences. That recognition could come from even hearing common phrases like April showers bring May flowers, or from recalling a story shared by a friend years ago. Whether the recognition occurs intuitively or perhaps maybe more intentionally, the key aspect of this stage is knowing that people have experienced similar circumstances and that this experience is not isolated relative to the rest of humanity. The next phase is the exploration of options for new roles, relationships, and actions. A person cannot change if they do not have the target that seems to align with their needs. For instance, when someone feels their current path no longer aligns with who they want to be, they might start looking at other jobs which feature responsibilities that interest them. Planning for a course of action is the next phase. This is when the learner figures out what steps they need to take to get to where they want to be. Then we have the acquisition of knowledge and skills for implementing one's plan. And this is the phase when a person downloads and develops resources to achieve the steps in their plan of action. And that's followed by provision of trying new roles. This is when a person tests out the person that they want to be, learning if the role aligns with their plan or if another role would be better. They might return to the acquisition phase based on what they learn. Then there's the building of competence and self-confidence in new roles and relationships. It takes time to become comfortable managing new relationships and new ways of relating. Confidence increases with each step achieved. Then we have a reintegration into one's life on the basis of conditions dictated by one's perspective. As confidence and competence grow, the changes fit into a broader sense of self, impacting how someone thinks and acts within the context of their community. To more clearly show the phases of perspective transformation, let's look at an example. Justin and Sandra have maintained their longtime friendship, even though they have lived in different cities for the last 2 years. Over the years, they have both disclosed how much they treasure each other for helping them navigate changes in life. So when Justin notifies Sandra that he plans to visit, she mentions she is excited to see a new painting from an artist named Kehinde Wiley. Sandra knows that Justin thinks art is a waste of time, but she has been eager to see the artist's new piece as she read about how it is an excellent display of artistic skill and a complex commentary on race and religion. Justin agrees to go to the museum with Sandra, and as they approach the piece, both of them stop in their tracks. They experience a sense of disorientation. Justin can't articulate his experience at first, but he begins wondering why he feels shame for saying art is a waste of time when he sees such skill in the work. He also begins to assess how he has perceived black males who wear clothing similar to what the man in the painting was wearing. He thought of them as gangsters or rappers, but not as people who might have a deep message to share like the biblical figures he held in high regard throughout his childhood. Sandra feels a sense of guilt as she looks at the picture. She sees the art as an example of a person who is performing in their area of excellence and using that to inspire others to think differently. She reflects on her career path so far as a scientist in a global pharmaceutical corporation and feels shame as she has decided to pursue a path focused on personal financial gain rather than excellence or social good. After moving through the rest of the museum in relative silence, they decide to relax on a bench in the museum garden. Sandra asked Justin what he thought of the art piece she was so excited to see. He shares how the piece made him question his assumptions about art being a waste of time, and he disclosed how that made him question how he perceived others as well. Sandra listened to him unpack the experience and then shared how the art caused her to question her career path. Justin listened to Sandra share and then noted how he sees how people find art to be important as it seems to stir something inside him. Sandra discloses how that is something she loves about art and was delighted to hear that he was moved by the experience. Justin then asked what people do with their lives after being moved by an artwork like that, and Sandra offers a guess that they spend time thinking about how they want to live differently after experiencing it. Justin admits that he thinks he needs to remember the painting when he crosses paths with someone who looks different than him. And Sandra responds asking how remembering the painting might change the way he thinks or behaves in those moments. Justin provides some ideas before asking Sandra a similar question about how the painting will impact her career choices, and they build on each other's hypotheses in a rational discourse and make a pact to follow up with each other on a future phone call in which they'll share how they've each tried new ways of thinking or behaving based on the experience. 3 months later, Justin and Sandra schedule time to catch up on a call. Sandra opens the conversation about their previous experience at the museum, noting how she used the inspiration from the artist and started a substitute teaching role in a science class at the local high school. She admitted she was nervous at first and even considered donating to a female-focused science fund instead, but she felt like that wouldn't fulfill her desire to give young women exposure to a female scientist. She continued to share how she feels great when the students are surprised to hear that she is a first-generation college graduate who now creates medicines that save people's lives. Sandra said she has started to consider creating an internship program at her company to give high school students more exposure to careers in science. Justin reveals that he recently helped with a fundraising campaign to support local artists. He said his father was disappointed when he turned down an invite to a basketball game because he needed to be present at a fundraising dinner. Yet he also shared that it kind of felt great to confidently do something his father found uninteresting. He said it made him reflect more on how his desire to please his dad might shape his other actions and judgments. Justin and Sandra experienced different transformations from a work of art, and there are many other ways that people could have been transformed by the piece, as humans can be transformed in so many different ways. This process of perspective transformation can be hindered by difficulty negotiating, compromising, stalling, backsliding, and self-deception. And that typically occurs during the beginning when one's ideas, feelings, or sense of order are viewed critically. Think of it as a close observation of the flaws, perhaps, in yourself. That can be exhausting, and you can see things you don't want to see. The other most common obstacle is taking action based on reflection, as it is such a demanding task. It is like a person that sees a heavy weight and decides that they just do not have the strength to move it, and so they move on. Mezirow alluded to life being an open system, full of adjustments that you need to make based on new experiences. And so he admitted these phases are not always completed in order, and it is expected that people will return to phases throughout the process of transformation. He did say that the key aspects for perspective transformation are critical reflection and critical discourse. Mezirow's phases of perspective transformation have been critiqued over the years. Some argue his approach is too rational and lacks consideration of the affective or subconscious domains. Others have said that it was too focused on Western culture values of individualism and therefore might not apply in a global setting. Others argue that he did not focus enough on social action. Mezirow responded to those criticisms over the years, and interest in the idea of transformative learning has continued to expand. It's expanded so much that some have proposed the idea that there needs to be an umbrella term for transformative learning, or a meta-theory, with sub-theories underneath, such as Mezirow's perspective transformation theory. To put it simply, perspective transformation allows you to see the world in new ways. It makes you more open to others' viewpoints, critically reflective of assumptions, resilient to manage changes, and integrative of experiences. You could say that perspective transformation is very similar to maturation, or, as 20-somethings like to say, adulting. So, how have you experienced perspective transformation in your life? Take a moment to reflect and consider these phases, and continue to read the many great works out there on the topic that are ever evolving. And here you will find the references used in the development of this presentation. Thank you for your time, and I hope you dive further into perspective transformation theory.